right? Whoever came up with the idea that by destruction, by death, that somehow you will bring about a society that's better than the one before it. Where'd that come from? Definitely not an Islamic concept. There's nowhere in the Seerah or in the Sunnah where you can point to the Prophet ﷺ advocated like destruction and death and so forth as a means by which to achieve a positive outcome, right? This is something that came out of the Enlightenment, unfortunately. This is something that came out and later capitalized upon by people like the Third Reich in Germany, by the Nazis, right? And it's kind of like, ooh, you don't say Nazis anymore, but that's what happened, right? Hitler had the idea that he can engineer the perfect race, the perfect society. And he was able, and the way that he did that was by dehumanizing elements of society, people who were human, and now they're no longer human, and let's put them in this kind of otherness, right, which is an outgrowth of Enlightenment, the whole idea of otherness. They're not with us anymore, and here we will bring about this positive outcome, right? So when Muslims start thinking, well, if we're able to eliminate all of the non-Muslim elements, right, and then we can bring about this utopian, perfect Muslim society, which is fallacious. It's not true, because there never was a perfect Muslim society. Even in the Prophet's Medina, there are people committing sins, right? There are people who are committing adultery. There are people who are drinking wine. So if there was going to be a society where all this is completely eliminated and we reach that particular point, it would have happened in the Prophet's society, but yet we don't see that that was the route that he took, right? There was obviously certain boundaries and precepts, and that if they were violated, there would be repercussions. But you don't see any of this kind of, let's eliminate these people, let's completely remove them. And so we come full circle when we start talking about gender relations, right, relations between man and woman. It's difficult to talk about it without having this kind of introduction in the beginning, because the very idea of talking about gender relations is something that came out of that whole Enlightenment cycle, right? The very idea that the fair sex, that women somehow are being undermined or disenfranchised or alienated, and things need to be done to improve their lot, right? Where did that come from? Right? How did that idea come about? Why, in certain circles in societies in Europe were women not even considered to be, or there were debates about whether human beings or not, right? And they were treated as chattel. Why in the Christian narrative, for example, was Eve seen as the one who enticed Adam, alayhi salam, to eat from the forbidden tree, right? So these kind of foundations, they inform how people treat one another, even centuries later, even though they don't realize it, right? So I think one of the ways for Muslims to remedy that, let's be informed about what our foundations are, right? We don't have that narrative. We don't have the narrative where Eve enticed Adam at all, right? The Quran says, فَأَكَلَا مِنْهَا, right? They both ate from the tree. And anyone who's familiar with Arabic, this is called alif al-tathniyah, right? This is the alif that means two people did something. And it doesn't indicate who did it first or who did it second, or that one was the cause of the other. In other words, in tandem, complete tandem, and it's silent on the idea of who did it first or who did it second. So in other words, if there's any blame to be assigned, it's not to be assigned to one party, but rather it was something that was collectively done, right? So that means that the idea of men and women, right, being equal partners before God and equal created human beings is something, it's a foundational principle. And that's where we begin, right? Not where we have to prove that. It's a musallamat, right? That's another thing, right? When we talk about modern society, the idea of musallamat, which means things that are a given, right? If any of you studied maths, right, when you do a proof, you always start with your, come on, maths majors here, engineers, anybody? Nothing? You start with your what? Huh?
Assumptions.
Right, the assumptions that you don't need to prove, right? In other words, they're self-evident. They're self-evident. You don't have to prove them. You don't have to demonstrate that they're true, right? And we have that, right? People will deny such things, but it's clearly a part of reality. There are self-evident truths, right? And these self-evident truths, they form the basis of where we move on and how we go on.